It's Lara here. Welcome to Witchy Wednesday, your weekly astrology forecast. This one's for the week of June 19th to 25th, 2019. Thanks for being here. I'm going to jump right in because there's a lot to talk about, and I'd like to keep this to one video today. Last week it was a little long, so I had to do part 1 and part 2, and I'm going to try to not do that this week. But we are at this point in the year that is, it has this sort of push comes to shove energy. This something's got to give, push pull. It's calling for us to be very mindful of how we react and how we use our words and how we direct our passions, drives, anger, these kinds of things. And it's really important at this time to be self-regulating, and the best way to do that is to be aware of potential triggers, of, just the general intensity that's brewing right now, or that's kind of reached a bit of a boiling point or a fever pitch, I guess. And if we're aware of that, then we can kind of take a deep breath, take a step back, and decide, right? How am I going to use this? How am I going to use what's coming up for me right now? So we're going to talk about that kind of thing in this video. And I just want to say to you that there is still, and will continue to be, there's a lot of energy in Capricorn and Cancer, opposite the chart, right? On that axis of Cancer-Capricorn. It has been fired up, lit up for a while now, and it is continuing to be that way. We've reached a hot spot. I think I used that term last week, and that's going to continue to be the case. And so I really encourage you to listen back to like the last 2 videos, last week and the week before, because this will, if you haven't listened to them yet and you're wondering what the hell is going on, right? Have a listen to those, and they'll put things in context for you, and perhaps help you to kind of navigate through what we're going through right now, right? So this isn't like, it's not meant to, scare you. That is not the intention at all here. I just know that lots of people are in this place of intensity for many different reasons, right? Lots of different reasons. And you're not alone in that. It's something that's happening for most of us right now. And so just, at least take some solace in the fact that this is kind of a collective experience that people are having right now. And as always, you get to choose how you respond to what life hands you, right? So I'm going to give you a quick run through of where the moon is at, which is currently in Capricorn as I'm recording this video on Wednesday, the 19th, and it's soon to move into Aquarius. So this evening it will move into Aquarius, and remember, I'm using Eastern Standard Time because that's the time zone that I live in, so you can adjust accordingly. But tonight it's moving into Aquarius, and then it will move into Pisces on Saturday and into Aries on Monday. And we have the solstice, which I'll touch on in this video, coming up on Friday. Summer solstice in the northern hemisphere, winter solstice in the southern hemisphere. And so the moon will be in Aquarius when that's going on Friday. But I'm going to run through some dates here and touch on some things that are happening. Some of this will be a bit of a a recap of what I spoke about last week and the week before, because we're at the culmination kind of point of that energy, of some of those energies anyway. So I'm going to just touch on that. And then we're going to spend most of the time talking about something that I've touched on but haven't spoken at length about, and that is where Asteroid Eris is in the chart and what's happening with her right now. Because when I looked at the chart, and from my own kind of experience, what I'm going through over these last weeks, and what I know some other people are going through, what I've seen out in the, on social media and that kind of thing in general out in the world, I think it's really relevant for us to be having this conversation right now. So that's what we're going to do. Before I jump in here, I want to say, of course, if you are interested in getting a reading, then you can find me at the link below. The link to my website is below, and reach out with any questions, that kind of thing. I got a lot going on right now with readings and otherwise, but I'm here, and it may take me a little bit longer than normal to get it to you, but I would love to do that for you. And also, I'll just say here, if you want to follow along on Facebook and Instagram, where I kind of post more regularly, you can find those links below as well. Okay, so moving on. I'm starting with yesterday, actually, which is the 18th of June. And that's because yesterday, Mercury and Mars were conjunct exact. So this is the first of 3 conjunctions between these planets happening over the next 2 months. And so really, in a nutshell, and that's because Mercury is going to retrograde, right? Mercury is retrograding anyway. I'm not going to go into the major details about this piece, but among other things, this is really a time to ask ourselves, are my words, Mercury, and my actions, Mars, congruent? Are they aligned, right? Am I saying one thing and doing another? Am I thinking that I'm doing such and such, like this is the way I'm living my life, but in actual reality, that's not what's happening? So these are the kinds of things that it's good to be mindful of and to contemplate at this time, right? And so Mercury is also, so Mercury and Mars together in the chart, and I'll show you the chart in just a second, are exactly opposite Pluto today, as I'm speaking, the 19th of June. And so this is some pretty powerful energy opposite each other, right? Pluto is known as the higher octave of Mars. So they share some similar energies, but Pluto is sort of like, it's a deeper planet. It's about the depths, the underworld, the secret, the deep psychology. It's about power dynamics and, kind of psychological warfare, I guess, about transformation, the death and rebirth cycle, right? Whereas Mars is more sort of on the day-to-day awareness, like it's a personal planet, right? Whereas Pluto is a transpersonal planet. It's farther out in the solar system. So Mars is more about, our drive, our passions, our aggression, our will, our desires, those kinds of things. So they're related, but Pluto, as I say, is the higher octave, right, of Mars. And so these are essentially 2 very willful and determined energies, right? And they're opposing each other. So there can be conflicts and tension possible. And in fact, very likely around this time. That's one way that this can definitely play out. So it's a time to really take a pause, take some deep breaths before you react, before you lash out, before you do something aggressive and impulsive. Be mindful not to, like, you know, of things like road rage, that sort of thing. Just don't get involved. Try not to get worked up. Try not to get yourself and put yourself in situations that trigger you, you know, as much as possible. But then on the more kind of positive end, I guess, this could have us feeling very determined, to use our, you know, like able to use our willpower and our courage and our strength to transform something in our lives, right? And to kind of like take back our lives or take back our power, that kind of thing. But it can be a time of harsh words. It can be a time of even secrets being uncovered, spoken, blurted out. But it can be speaking our truth in a very assertive, not aggressive, assertive. There's a difference way. So I'm going to show you the chart now before I carry on. Here's the chart for the actual solstice on the 21st is when I drew this chart up for. So that's on Friday, and today is Wednesday, right? But this is still relevant. So remember I said to you, by the time of the solstice, the moon will be in Aquarius. It's in Capricorn still right now. But and then we have, of course, the sun down here, down here in Cancer. It's Cancer season, right? And there's the North Node in Cancer. There's Mars and Mercury right beside each other, right? Conjunct in Cancer. Right across the sky, all those hot red lines, right? Fiery red lines across the sky from Pluto, Saturn, and the South Node. And at the time I'm doing this video, the moon is there too, sitting right there. Okay, so all of that, you can see that's just continuing to like ping, ping, ping back and forth, right? And then we've got Jupiter remaining in Sagittarius here, still kind of squaring Neptune. Well, not kind of, definitely exactly squaring Neptune in Pisces. Neptune in Pisces at the time of the solstice will go retrograde. So I'll speak to you about that briefly as well in this video. Then some other things I want to draw your attention to here are asteroid Juno will just tip into Leo this week. So moving into Leo, and I'll just give you a snippet about what that signifies. There's Venus in Gemini, and Uranus in Taurus, Chiron in Aries up here. And of course, this is what I want to draw your attention to mostly in this video, Asteroid Eris at 24 degrees of Aries. Now, the fact that Eris is in Aries is not a huge deal, and I'll tell you that. I'll tell you why when I get there. But what I want to point out to you is Eris is squaring, right? 90-degree angle. A conversation of tension, of something's got to give, of this needs to be resolved, pick a direction, that kind of thing. Eris is squaring all this energy in Capricorn and Cancer. Okay, so I want to draw that to your attention. All right, so that's the chart for today. And I spoke to you about Mercury and Mars conjunct and then opposite Pluto, right? And also it was just opposite Saturn as well. And that's it's close, all of that. And I spoke about those pieces in greater detail again in last week's video and the week before. So that's all I will kind of say about that piece here for the moment. But I wanted to also mention to you that Mercury on June 20th is entering its shadow phase. It's going to go retrograde on Sunday, July 7th. But right now it's in an area of the chart where it will revisit when it retrogrades, right? So we may be getting a touch of what's transpiring for us over the Mercury retrograde. I'll talk more about that when the time comes. But so I mentioned to you that asteroid Juno is moving into Leo as well this week. And so just briefly, Juno is in mythology the wife of Jupiter. And she is all about loyalty and soulmates and, you know, kind of bonds, like strong bond, like marriage bonds. And she also, like on the shadow side, she can be about, jealousy, and really, because she really expects loyalty, right? So when Juno is in Leo, there's this energy of really wanting to be respected and admired at this time. We want to be kind of the kings and queens, sort of thing, particularly in partnership, in those close, partnerships with our soulmates and our marriage partners and that kind of thing. So I just wanted to mention that to you. And a word on the Neptune retrograde here. So June 21st, Neptune's retrograding at 18 degrees of Pisces. And Neptune will be retrograde until November 27th. So it's not that unusual, really, because Neptune is retrograde about 40% of the time. So not a huge deal. But it is a point where when Neptune goes retrograde, it can be kind of like a removing of the rose-colored glasses wherever Neptune is in our chart, right? The delusion, the kind of, deception, the fogginess, the confusion, that sort of thing. So wherever Neptune is in your chart, during the retrograde, it's a good time to kind of take a clearer look at that area of life. So, it's also a good time for tuning inward about Neptunian things. So like spirituality and self-discovery and connecting to your intuition and your higher power and, some healthy escapism, those kinds of things. So that's a Neptune retrograde. And then, see, lots going on this week, right? And I really want to get to speaking about Eris there. Solstice is happening, as I mentioned, on Friday. So the solstice is marked when, so the sun is entering the sign of Cancer. And at the moment that the sun enters Cancer, that marks the solstice, right? Summer solstice in Northern Hemisphere, winter solstice in the south. So that is happening my time at 11:56. If you look online, Eastern time, you'll probably see 11:58, but I'm a little bit more north from the like Washington or New York. So 11:56 exact is my time. And so this marks the exact balance point between the light and the dark, when those things come into perfect harmony. It's the longest day of the year in the Northern Hemisphere. So the days will grow shorter after the solstice, right? Daylight hours. And in the Southern Hemisphere, it's the shortest day of the year. So the days will start to grow longer after this point. And it's kind of like, well, the sun is at its furthest point, right? At the solstice. And so the way I envision this, it's kind of like the sun is far, far back, getting this vantage point, this kind of bird's eye view of everything, shining its light on the complete picture, right? And kind of going, okay, this is where things are at. And now it's, it's time to kind of, for the next 6 months to unfold. It's kind of like, okay, that half of the year went like this. I'm taking a look, at all of it. I'm shining my light on all of it. And now, it's this turning point in the year. And there's this energy of kind of seesaw. And I've heard several other astrologers describe this time that we're in right now and the energies that have been playing out. And you can even see it in the chart on the Cancer-Capricorn axis, right? Of expansion, contraction, expansion, contraction. And that doesn't necessarily feel super good, but it's necessary. We can't be in full bloom all the time, and we can't be, all curled up in a ball all the time either. So we have to have this kind of back and forth, right? That's how we get the overall balance in things. So, I mentioned, I think I'm going to move into talking about Eris now because I really don't want to run out of time here. So as I mentioned to you, the goddess Asteroid Eris is squaring all this energy in Cancer and Capricorn. She is also loosely trining Jupiter and sextiling the moon in Aquarius. But the moon in Aquarius, it's a very short-lived thing, right? Because the moon moves very quickly. But she's loosely trining Jupiter. A trine is a supportive aspect, really. So when the sun is in Cancer, I didn't say this piece yet, right? Because the sun will move into Cancer on the solstice. Happy birthday, Cancer sun signs, by the way. I definitely know a few. But when the sun, that energy of the sun moves into Cancer, we're more inclined to nest, to take care of things on the home front. And we're more susceptible as well to the emotional ebbs and flows, ups and downs, right? Cancer is ruled by the moon, and that rules our emotions. So, as I mentioned off the top, I really see Eris as a key player at this time. And I'm going to give you a little background info on Eris in terms of the mythology and that. And then you may, the light bulbs may start going off for you as I speak about this. If you think about the times that we are in, and particularly if you are a woman, I would say that this will probably resonate with you. Or if you are a man who is experiencing kind of a potentially like a rebirth of his feminine side, or if you're in contact with a lot of female energy, this may be pretty obvious to you as well. So Eris she was considered the daughter of Nyx, Nyx, and Nyx is night. And then her father, there's a few different scenarios that people talk about, but this one resonates most deeply with me. Her father was Erebus, darkness. That means darkness, right? So she is a dark goddess, the dark goddess kind of thing. And, in some Greek myths, it indicates that she was the daughter of Zeus and Hera. And, who knows, but the version of the story that talks about her mother being Nyx in particular is really what resonates. So, and she is the female counterpart. Some people call her the sister of Mars, right? Which may be why people think that Zeus and Hera are her parents, because they are the parents of Mars. I see her more as like the female counterpart to Mars. And so she's known as the goddess of strife and discord, and I've mentioned that to you briefly before. She is like the misunderstood feminine, right? The woman scorned. Think of that saying, "Hell hath no fury like a woman scorned." That's kind of the energy of Eris, really. And she, if you've ever seen Maleficent, the movie Maleficent, or that character in general, this is Eris. Maleficent is Eris. So if you want to kind of bring it into modern times and have a something to relate it to, then think about the character of Maleficent. So in the myth, right, in the Greek myth, Eris, who is called Discordia in Roman mythology, she wasn't invited to a wedding, and so she was pissed about this, right? She wasn't invited. Everybody else was invited and she wasn't invited. And so she was overlooked, or maybe intentionally not invited, because she's a bit over the top, or not your kind of, not in line with what we have come to recognize as, proper female energy. So anyway, she threw a golden apple over the wall and into the wedding party, right? And the apple had inscribed on it, "To the prettiest one." And so Hera, the wife of Zeus, and Athena and Aphrodite all kind of went, to the apple and started fighting over it. Well, this must be meant for me. I'm the prettiest one. This must be meant for me. I'm the prettiest one. This kind of thing. Like, who did it really belong to? And so, that was Eris, like, intentionally stirring the pot, right? So, Zeus, like they said, okay, Zeus, you decide, who is this apple meant for? And he didn't want to. maybe you can hardly blame him. I don't know. But so he asked his friend, his mortal friend Paris, to do it, to make the choice. And Paris chose Aphrodite. And that event began the Trojan War. So that's a little bit of the mythology of Eris, right? Eris is ultimately about the frustrated feminine, who is struggling to be seen, to be acknowledged, to be heard, to be taken seriously, to be invited to the party, right? And so she's in a lot of emotional pain. She feels isolated, and she can lash out in anger. Like, I will not go unnoticed any longer kind of thing. And she is, if you really dig down into the mythology, she is referred to as chaos. And so she's responsible for maintaining the natural order, kind of no matter what it takes. And other names, when the asteroid Eris was discovered, I think in 2005, if I recall, she was also, some other names that were up for consideration were Xena and Persephone. So think about that, those characters as well, right? And similar kind of energies. Xena, warrior, princess sort of thing. And she's seen as the shadow feminine. And sometimes, I'll just say here, for anybody who's really into this kind of thing and knows anything about Lilith and astrology, right? People think of the shadow feminine as Lilith, and she is, right? She's also a dark goddess. But in my, and I'm not an expert. I don't pretend to be an expert on the goddesses, the asteroids at all. I'm always learning. I'm fascinated by them. But in my feeling and what I've kind of uncovered, to me, Lilith is like the counterpart of Mars, and Eris is like the counterpart of Eris. So like the higher octave. Sorry. Eris is like the counterpart of Pluto. So she's like the higher octave of Lilith, just like I mentioned, Pluto's the higher octave of Mars. That's kind of how I sense her. So she's kind of more in our unconscious, and it's those unconscious suppressed feminine and our anger about that, and those power dynamics and that kind of thing. And that gets triggered when Eris has a transit or conversation with other planets, which is what's happening right now, right? The square to all the Capricorn Cancer energy. Incidentally, I'll just give you a little, personal anecdote. Not only is Pluto retrograding exactly, or Neptune retrograding exactly on my sun in Pisces, I also have Eris in my birth chart exactly conjunct Saturn and Venus in Aries. And so with this square that's going on, it's like really intense for me right now. So just, a little anecdote. Anyway, this isn't about me, but I just sometimes I like to share so that, you can kind of see how this is in real life, how this happens, right? So Eris has been in Aries since 1922. So remember I said it's not a huge deal that she's in Aries, because she takes forever, 557 years to orbit the sun, far longer than Pluto. She's further out in the solar system than Pluto. And so we all have Eris and Aries in our charts. Not at the same degree necessarily, but we all have Eris and Aries, right? And then it depends what house that's falling in for you. We don't all have Eris in the same house. But Eris kind of says, bring it, right? She's like, I'm not afraid to fight this fight. I'm not afraid to fight for what's right. I'll take you down with me if that's what needs to happen. She embodies chaos, and she commands space, and she doesn't ask for anybody's permission. And she can kind of be an instigator rather than a defender. It's kind of like, you know what? This needs to be dredged up. This needs to be You know, I'm not going to stand back here and let this happen kind of thing. And so she's really kind of this feminine warrior fighting for the right to exist, right? And I wanted to mention to you, with Chiron now also in Aries at 5 degrees right now, I think 5 degrees. Yep, 5 degrees. I've mentioned you before. I've done a whole two separate videos on Chiron and Aries, or Chiron and then Chiron and Aries on my channel, and you can find those there. But Chiron and Aries is overall about healing our identity. And this is a process that we're all going through over the next, well, now it's about 7 years, right? And I see this on a deeper level as healing the identity of the feminine, really. Making the feminine whole again, bringing together the light and the dark. And that Eris piece is kind of like the missing piece of the puzzle. So, and Aries is about, the sign of Aries is about our sense of self, our identity, right? And so there is this fight and struggle for the feminine to be fully and completely acknowledged and recognized and accepted. There's sort of this, you know, mad as hell and not going to take it anymore energy that's bubbling up right now, right? And obviously how this energy plays out, coupled with the Mars, Mercury, Saturn, Pluto opposition, will depend on, you know, kind of how much your chart is being triggered and your level of an awareness and consciousness and your intention as well. And I will say to you that the cardinal signs, Aries, Cancer, Libra, Capricorn, are really likely feeling this most intensely. And particularly if you have any planets or points between, say, 18 and 30 degrees of the cardinal signs, you're definitely feeling this, right? And so just before I launch into each of the signs here, and I hope I've left us enough time, worst case scenario, I'll do the same thing I did last time and do this in 2 parts. So if it happens that way, it happens that way. And we'll just roll with it, right? So, but Eris, what I'm going to point to is, where is Eris sitting in your chart, right? So where is Aries in your chart? And then where it's squaring the Cancer-Capricorn. And I'm not going to talk too much about the Cancer-Capricorn piece, because if you listen to last week's video, if you listen to the week before, I think in particular, you'll hear about where is Cancer-Capricorn in my chart, right? And what does this mean? But Eris is this kind of, you know, where are you feeling like you need to be heard, seen, acknowledged, empowered? Where are you fed up? Where do you need to have some difficult conversations, or stand up for yourself, or stand up for what you feel is right? Where are you willing to kind of walk into the fire, right? And be a bit of an instigator if you need to be. This can also be about our determination and our focus on what we desire, and what's going to help you feel nurtured. That's the Cancer piece, and connected, right? The Cancer piece, connected to your tribe, whatever that may be for you. Connected to your emotions and allow you a sense of emotional security, Cancer, regardless of the should, you know, I should do this, the have-tos. These are all the Capricorn things. What the authorities say or what the rules say, you know, because we've got the South Node in Capricorn and the North Node in Cancer. And very briefly, the North Node is what we want to move towards, where we are being called to. And the South Node is what we need to move on from at this point. Let go of, release, those kinds of things. All right, so keeping that in mind, let's go through each of the signs here, and I will point out the house that Eris is sitting in for you, and the houses that she is squaring, right? And so it's kind of like where Eris is maybe being poked, irritated by wherever Cancer and Capricorn are in the chart. So Eris, we're going to start with Aries, because Eris is in your first house, Aries, okay? And that is the house of the self. So something about your own identity, like you're fired up about this, maybe fed up, maybe taking back your power, taking control of your identity, you're longing to be acknowledged and seen for and loved for who you are, literally. First house. Your physical, perhaps your physical vitality, your appearance, how you approach the world, your how you put yourself out there, right? These kinds of things are where, what Eris is there drawing your attention to. And Eris is being triggered in that house right now, right? And some things that may play into that are the fourth house of home and family and roots and ancestry and emotional security and your connection to the sort of mother energy, and then and your place of living, even potentially, and then the 10th house of your worldly ambitions, your career, your public reputation and persona, the public legacy you wish to leave, and your relationship to authority, even the father figure, those kinds of things. Okay, so that's kind of the three parts of the chart that are being activated for you right now. And that Eris in the first house. Okay, so that's for you, Aries. Moving on to Taurus. Taurus, Eris is sitting in your 12th house, right? And so you may be being kind of triggered on a subconscious level. The 12th house is about our unconscious. It's about our how we sabotage ourselves, potentially, unconsciously. It's about also how we spend time in solitude and reflection and rest, and connecting to our higher power, our inner selves, our spirituality, how we kind of recover even. It's about places like hospitals, healthcare facilities, prisons, ashrams, spiritual retreat centers, rehab facilities, any sort of thing that you consider sort of behind closed doors like that, right? So that's where Eris is really the fly in the ointment right now. And but this is not like, this needs to happen, right? It needs to happen for us collectively and individually on some level, right? And the individual piece is largely speaking to what house that Eris is sitting in for you. And Eris is in that house for you for your lifetime, but it's being triggered right now by the Cancer-Capricorn piece, which is in the 3rd and 9th houses for you. So Cancer is in the 3rd house of communications, of your immediate environment, and those daily interactions, and people like siblings and cousins and neighbors and your peers. How you communicate, your style of communication, writing, speaking, your self-talk as well falls into this house, right? And then the 9th house is, it's higher education. The 3rd house is kind of more, education, like basic education, elementary school, high school, early learning kind of thing. 9th house, though, is higher education. It is our connection with foreign cultures and what we can learn from them. It can be travel, usually long distance travel. It can have to do with our philosophies and our belief systems, right? And can have to do, 9th house can have to do with kind of like religious dogma as well, right? What else did I miss there? Teachers, learning. I said that, getting our message out to the wider kind of world. So institutions like colleges, universities, or any kind of higher learning that you do, right? Courses you take, that kind of thing. So there's a square from the 3rd and 9th house to Eris in the 12th house. So you can, contemplate that in your own life and kind of see, all right, I see how this is happening for me. So I'm going to move on to Gemini now, and I'm going to say I am almost guaranteed I'm not getting through all the 12 signs in one video, so my bad, but we'll just do 2 parts like we did last week. So Gemini, this Eris is sitting in your 11th house. Again, this is for your lifetime, Eris in the 11th house. But she's being triggered right now by the Cancer-Capricorn energies, right? And so Eris in the 11th house is where Eris is rising up and wanting to be noticed, and kind of maybe taking back her power. And that has to do with you in association to your friends, like friendship groups, organizations, clubs, these kinds of things that you're associated with, even online communities, things that happen over the internet, that kind of thing. It's also about your long range vision for the future, your hopes, your biggest hopes and wishes for the future. And it can have to do with like the people that can help you achieve those, right? Benefactors even. And so this is where Eris is stirring the pot kind of thing, being triggered in the 11th house, wanting your attention and being challenged by the second house, Cancer in the second house, of your finances, of, your resources, like material possessions, money, and your self-worth, your values, what you value and place importance on. And then the 8th house, where Capricorn is, which is shared resources, other people's money, taxes, inheritances, debts, insurance payments, wills, these kinds of things. And your intimate relationships, where you feel vulnerable, your intimate connections with people, deep psychological healing processes, the kind of hidden occult. All occult means is hidden knowledge, right? Those kinds of things being, so the second and 8th house is squaring the 11th house. And so those three pieces of the puzzle can be interacting right now in a bit of a challenging way, but that's not necessarily bad, right? Because it can fire you up to do something about it. It just totally depends on your own will and intention and action, really, what you choose to do with this energy. So that's for you, Gemini. Moving on to Cancer now. And Cancer, you'll be the last sign before I jump off this video and start another one, which will be part 2. And I'll start part 2 with Leo, okay? But Cancer, excuse me. You've got Eris sitting in your 10th house. Eris has been in the 10th house your whole life and will be, because she's, like I said at the intro, she's there for a good long time. But she's being triggered right now by the Cancer-Capricorn piece. And this is like big time for you because obviously you're a Cancer, right? So lots of this energy is happening in your sign. But Eris in the 10th house, it's about empowerment, about a longing to be acknowledged and noticed and loved and accepted. And it's about fighting the necessary fight, being the kind of warrior princess, if you will, in your public life, your career, the legacy you wish to leave, your relation with authorities, and even your own authority, right? And that can be like father figures or other types of authorities. So I think I covered all of the things there. So that's where Eris is sitting and triggering for you and being challenged by your first house of self, your identity. Who am I? Literally, right? And my journey through life and this physical life on Earth. Your physical vitality and well-being, like physical health kind of thing. Your physical appearance, your approach, your instinctual approach to the world and how the world perceives you, right? So, and then that's the first house where obviously Cancer, your sign is. And then the 7th house where the Capricorn piece is about your one-to-one relationships, right? So the other, your close personal relationships, whether they be marriage partners, or just significant others, close friends, business associates, rivals, any of these things, right? So those are the 3 pieces that are being called, that are calling for your attention right now when this is going on, right? And Eris in the 10th house, and then being challenged by those other two pieces in the 1st and the 7th for you, Cancer. So I'm going to leave this part 1 of this video here, even though that wasn't my intention, but hey, it's what happened. And I'm going to jump off, and then you'll see me. If you haven't heard your sign yet, you'll see me in part 2, okay? So there'll be a part 2, and jump over there and you can listen. All right, thanks. So I will talk to you over there. Bye-bye.